Greetings, friends. I was having a discussion with a very intelligent friend of mine. He tends to believe in the evolutionary Darwin picture of our origins. And we were discussing, well, how can you say that there's any experiment that has ever verified it? How would you test for something like this? And he brought up the periodic table, which I thought not to make sense, because a graph or a table or a categorization is not an experiment. This led to him sending me an article in Scientific American, and I haven't read the whole article, but I just got into the first few paragraphs of it. I want to comment on something near the beginning of the article. The title of this article is "The Periodic Table of the Cosmos, 100 Years of the Hertzsprung-Russell Diagram." I don't know if this is discussing the periodic table or some other type of table to discuss astronomy, but that's another subject that ties into the evolutionary worldview, the picture they have of the heavens. So let me just read it for the first few sentences of this article. Modern astronomy paints a vivid picture of the universe having been born in a cataclysmic bang and filled with exotic stars ranging from gargantuan red supergiants that span the size of a modest solar system to hyperdense white dwarf stars and the black holes that are smaller than Earth. These discoveries are all the more remarkable because astronomers infer them from the faintest glimmers of light, sometimes just a handful of photons. A key to this success is a graph that two astronomers introduced 100 years ago. Sorry, I don't mean to laugh, I don't mean to mock. This is taken seriously by many people, but the reason I found it a bit funny is because we have a serious problem here. I appreciate the honesty of the author in pointing out that these conclusions about the nature of our reality are based upon what astronomers infer from the faintest glimmers of light, sometimes just a handful of photons. This is what I've been saying for a while, and I'm sure I wouldn't be the only one to say this. I'm sure I'm quite unoriginal in saying this. All we have when it comes to the heavens is light. Perhaps other forms of radiation, maybe radio waves, but all of that can be classified as vibrations. Invisible things, which our instruments can pick up, or maybe the naked eye can pick up. Some of our scientific instruments can pick up. So they have some reality empirically, but we can't interact with the heavens in any other empirical manner. We cannot go there. Avoiding for now the question of going to the moon and Mars, let's just put that aside. In any other meaningful sense, we cannot go there, retrieve things. Like, even if you believe that we've traveled within the solar system, on the scale of what they say the heavens is, or the universe, obviously we can't go and experience any of that directly. We cannot even see it directly, let alone listen to it. Unless, I mean, you could say a radio dish can listen to things, but you yourself cannot empirically test for these things the way scientists here on Earth can test for things in biology, in the ocean, in mountains. They can take ice samples to determine how old ice is. They can interact with things here on Earth in a way that you cannot with astronomy. You can only interpret light. So it's not fully a real scientific investigation in that sense. But this is not to detract from the discipline or to say that the discipline is nonsense. It's not really a real science the way, for example, anthropology, which I majored in university, is not a real discipline compared to philosophy or studying a particular language. Like, those were real disciplines. Some of these social sciences are not real disciplines. It's true with science too. There are fields of science which cannot be fully regarded as scientific because you do not have the capacity to have scientific investigation in the fullest sense with these affairs. You are just interpreting light. The interpretations could change from decade to decade, from generation to generation. Is there dark matter? Is there not dark matter? Is the universe expanding? Is it not expanding? These things can change and come into fashion and come out of fashion in the scientific community with time. what the consensus believes in one century may not be what the consensus believes in the coming century. So you might say a meteorite is an example of a real hard object from the heavens that we can interact with. And I'll give you that, that's true. But meteorites are very rare objects. A lot of them are very sketchy, especially like these craters. And they say, oh, this crater is 1 million years old, and you can do a radioactive analysis of the minerals around the edge, and that's meteorite material. It's like, okay, well, maybe. I mean, that's a bit of a stretch. But there are smaller meteorite objects that do fall, and people can collect them. So yeah, I'll give you half a point on that. But again, it's a very rare thing. We find that these elements are present on Earth too, so it's like, okay, there's some matter that we're familiar with on Earth above the Earth, and it fell back to Earth, but it never came from Earth. As far as we know, it must have come from somewhere else. Maybe it did. And it's only half true to say that we're moving to an increased state of knowledge scientifically about the world. In some manners that's true, but there's other aspects of knowledge scientifically that are lost, that are forgotten, that are perhaps misinterpreted in coming centuries. Now, already based on what we know to be very limited knowledge, we make these great conclusions about the nature of the universe. And on top of that, we say that stars created the building blocks that are present in all life. They created the hydrogen atoms and maybe some of the other elements that are present in life. So we are made of stars. This is very materialist. This is not compatible with the Christian story. I don't know through what metaphor you can make it seem like stars creating humans is the same as God creating humans. That's a bit too far, I think. Even on the face of it, there's no reason to draw those conclusions. We don't know what stars are. Again, it's just a bunch of light, and they say there's all this gas burning, and some stars are doing this, and some stars are doing that, and blowing up. Well, maybe we'll change our conclusions 30 years later. Maybe we'll start to change, oh, it's actually not that far away, oh, it's actually closer. No, we can't actually go there. No, we can't even go to our own sun because it would vaporize us. The sun is a real thing. Yes, there's lights in the sky. Those are supposed to be small suns. Maybe they're small suns. I don't even know what the sun is. It's a burning ball of gas. Why hasn't it burned out yet? Well, it's just so much gas. It's just gonna burn and burn and burn. How did all that gas get there? Well, gravity just kind of came together. Well, what's gravity? Well, we don't really know. Where did the gas come from? Well, it came from stuff coming together, from other stars exploding, and then everything exploded in the beginning. But then there was an explosion in the beginning, yet if you have nothing, how can you have an explosion? How can you have a big bang in a space that doesn't exist? When you have a bang, it occurs in a space. It creates a shock in a space. That's what an explosion is. It's something that occurs in a space, in a pre-existing space. So it is a contradiction to say an explosion occurred at the beginning of the universe and was the beginning of the universe. For that to be an explosion would contradict itself as being the beginning. You cannot have an explosion and also call that the beginning of the universe. And we're supposed to believe that this all led to these gas objects that we can never really interact with, creating the building blocks for life, and I'm made of stars. So again, I am a skeptic on the heavens. I believe that indeed there's a vast space above us, but what is it even to speak of space beyond this earth? We have no way of imagining that. We have no way of imagining space beyond this earth. We can see the celestial objects in the sky. They appear to be solid, like the moon. I have no idea what the real nature is of these objects in the sky are, if they're really as far away as they say they are. I doubt it, though. I believe the massive scales of distance that are created in astronomy, at least the consensus of astronomers and how they view the universe, is the same reason they created massive timescales in the evolutionary worldview, to make humans small and insignificant, to make the earth an insignificant dot in a much greater place. And certainly that goes without saying, they made the earth not the center. They've removed the earth from the center of the worldview, physically in their worldview. The earth is said to not be the center of the universe. universe, just as humans are not the epitome of God's creation on Earth, if you take the materialist worldview seriously. So I don't think there's any sense in trying to blend the Christian worldview with Darwinism and the evolutionary worldview. Some may call it theistic evolution. Well, God had still created man, but what does that really mean? Metaphorically, he created man, and you can still have him coming from sludge into single-celled organisms and fish, and then proto-apes, which gave rise to humans. God led this, therefore God created man in the same manner. I understand there's metaphors and symbolic language in Scripture and in the Christian tradition, but I have limits as to how we can interpret certain events. Who am I to say? I am not an expert in theology or in science, but we can ask basic questions, and I do think it stands to reason that if they are willing to admit that all they are doing is inferring to the manner of only a few photons, and then creating tables and categorizations which they take as a scientific investigation with verifiable results. I think at the least we can see this is flawed and extremely limited. This is a very sparse foundation on which to lay claim to the nature of the heavens. Maybe the heavens is somewhat like the astronomers say, a vast space with these large, desolate objects, although I don't think that the stars are what they say they are, and black holes. But at least, okay, maybe it's half true, but are we really even in a position to lay that claim with any assurance? You cannot use a table, even though it explains things, to justify the claims of truth, to justify that you have established something beyond doubt. You cannot do that through tables which are based on abstract observations. Tables explain things, models explain things, but they come further down the process in the scientific method. It may be very useful to have the table. Certainly it is revealing many things. But the diversity in elements and light wavelengths is that, an observation, patterns. We cannot directly interact with these patterns to see how they behave. We cannot create celestial objects to see what's actually shaping them. We can only make our abstract tables based on observations of data, which doesn't have an ultimate grounding, because we cannot remove ourselves from the earth and the heavens and observe both. We're here on earth, in the universe, which we can't even really think of in physical terms. How could something limitless like a universe even expand? What does that even mean for something to expand if it has no borders? That doesn't even make sense. Hasta luego, amigos.